attending the Now we're recording. Thank you all for attending the Health Industries Week alumni panel hosted by the Center for Career and Experiential Education. My name is Courtney Mackey Wilbur. I'm the coordinator of internships and experiential education for the Department of Kinesiology here at URI. This panel is being recorded, as we already said. And just to kick us off, I'll ask for each panelist to briefly introduce yourself, including pronouns if you'd like, in your current role and the organization that you work for. Who wants to get us started?
I can go ahead and
Jake.
start.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jake Froberg. I graduated from URI 2 years ago in 2024. Um, and I've definitely had a good 2 years since graduating. I started off by getting a job where I did my internship, which was just at Ortho, Rhode Island, at a PT clinic. I actually ended up working as a technician in a department that works in kind of like bracing and casting. And then about a month and a half ago, I just recently started a position with a company called MedSource as an associate orthopedic rep. So I'm in the OR covering total joint cases to be, very basic.
I'll go next.
All right. Thank you, Jake. We can just kind of keep moving on. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you want, you guys, this could like say our order if it helps the flow when we go through the next questions. So Jake
Mhm.
gets first and then Angelica. All
Yep.
right.
Hi, everyone. My name is Angelica Spinazzola. So I'm a senior quality improvement specialist at Neighborhood Health Plan of Rhode Island. I graduated URI in 2016, not to date myself, but yep, 10 years ago, which is crazy. And I was at Tufts Medicine before Neighborhood Health Plan of Rhode Island, and I'm going to go into depth in a bit about that.
I can go next. My name is Matt Vitliano. I graduated from URI in 2015. Currently a phys ed teacher in Bedford, New Hampshire. And yeah, so worked in a variety of settings in the educational field before I got here. Got my master's in health and wellness, and yeah, I'll go into a little bit more in a little bit.
Hey everyone, I'm Allison Feria. I class of 2010, kinesiology at URI. I own the current facility where I interned back in 2010, so it's been 16 years with the same studio, and I've owned it for about half that. So glad to be.
That's awesome. You never know what your internship will lead to, I guess. You could end up owning the whole place. Um, okay, so we'll get into the questions. I'm glad you guys um, left a little bit of mystery because we will ask a bunch of questions. So for the first one, can you tell us about your journey since graduating from URI? You can include, different jobs that you had and or additional schooling or certifications and whatnot. Pretty much what steps led you to where you are now from the time after you graduated?
So we'll same order, yeah. So when I graduated, I wasn't quite sure exactly where I wanted to dive into yet. I knew, the general field. I actually started bartending. I had previously bartended. It was to keep myself busy, pay off some of the student loans. And so I worked at that for probably about 8 months. And then I interviewed for a position as an orthopedic technician at Ortho Rhode Island, right in here. They have a lot of locations. I ended up working in the Providence in the Warwick location. But I did do my internship at their PT clinic in Wakefield. So then I got that job, worked there for about a year and a half, and then kind of wanted a little bit of a change of pace, but still wanted to be, in the orthopedic field. So I just kept my eyes open. And about a month and a half ago, I started the position where I'm at now, which kind of just entails medical devices. So um, joint replacements for, the elderly population typically. And I've been at that for about a month and a half now, and I'm really enjoying learning as much as I can.
I think I'm next. So like I said, I've been out of school for about like 8 years now, so I have a bit under my belt, but I did try to summarize it. So since graduating from URI, my path has evolved quite a bit. When I was at URI, I originally planned to become a PT. So I was prepared to apply to PT school, but I made the decision to pivot towards a more business oriented path. So I've always been very goal driven, competitive. I was actually a swimmer for 13 years. I swam for URI. So I knew I wanted a career where I could continue to grow and challenge myself over time. So that led me to pursue my Master of Healthcare Administration at Seton Hall University, which I started right after graduating URI. And that decision really changed the course of my career and opened up a ton of doors I didn't even know existed at the time. After completing my MHA, I started at Tufts Medicine in Boston as a quality improvement associate. So that role gave me a foundation in healthcare quality, population health, and the ACO side of things in healthcare. I was working with data, supporting quality reporting, and learning how performance is measured and improved across provider networks. And I was also very fortunate to have a really strong manager early in my career, which made a huge difference in helping me build confidence and understand the industry right off the bat. So I was promoted to a practice quality associate and account manager role after that, where I worked directly with 45 provider practices across Massachusetts. So this was a very hands-on role. It was like boots on the ground. I partnered with physicians, nurses, and office staff to help them with closing gaps in care and improve their HEDIS performance and meet quality benchmarks tied to value-based contracts. So this experience really helped me develop my communication skills, and it really taught me how to translate data into accountable, actionable strategies in a real world clinical setting. So about 4 years, I was at Tufts Medicine, and then I transitioned back to Rhode Island and joined Neighborhood Health Plan of Rhode Island, where I am currently as a quality improvement specialist. So moving from the provider ACO side of things to now a health plan side, it was definitely a big shift. It required me to think about healthcare more of a payer perspective and understand how quality, compliance, and performance are managed at a broader level. So in that role, I led quality data analysis, supported performance improvement initiatives across multiple product lines, so Medicare, Medicaid, and worked on strategies to tie pay for performance and regulatory requirements. And then recently, last year, I was promoted to Senior Quality Improvement Specialist, where I now lead enterprise-wide quality initiatives. And my work includes overseeing CMS, so Medicare model of care programs, also supporting NCQA accreditation efforts, and partnering across teams to drive measurable improvements in population health outcomes. And then looking back at all of this, every step along the way definitely built on the last. And even when it didn't really feel like it at the time, it definitely did. And one thing I've learned is that healthcare is incredibly complex and constantly evolving. And even after 8 years in this field, I'm still learning something new every day, which is extreme. That's actually one of the things I enjoy most about being in the healthcare field. And also, I'm really grateful for the path that I chose, and it all started at URI.
All right, so I started on a pre-PT path at URI, went through the whole internship process. I did an internship at the Sargent Center in their rehabilitative program, and they also had a special ed program within their facility. And the more I got into the PT internship, I really learned that it wasn't for me, and really fell in love with the educational side. So I'd already submitted my applications for PT schools, took the GREs, and when I got them, I didn't even open them. and just was riding it out. So after graduation, I was kind of in a panic mode, found a job working in home healthcare for a high schooler. Excuse me. And helped him out with homework, brought him to after school functions. Then that led to working in a special ed classroom as a paraprofessional, then into a self contained behavioral classroom in the school that I'm currently at. And the more I was talking with the phys ed teachers in the facility, just fell in love with it, saw how much more they did instead of just the old school, just roll the ball out and just go play. Um, so I ended up getting a master's in health and wellness education, did an alternative certification, used the kinesiology classes as the foundation, and kind of fell in love with it. So I've been at Rossi Allergio Middle School in Bedford for this is year 4, and previously I was at one of the elementary schools in the district. So really use that internship for beneficial reasons, learning that that really wasn't for me, and was able to pivot in a different direction, but still using the skills and resources that I had at URI to get where I am.
I'll go next. Yeah, so I guess since my career kind of started while I was at URI, not really knowing that at the time, but I actually started at Salve Regina my freshman year and transferred over to URI, realizing that, you know, my interest was more in exercise science, and I did always have a motivation for ownership, but figured out that, you know, fitting both of those into my life required probably more hands-on experience. Um, so from transferring, I had a few credits that kind of were like a gap in order to graduate. So Heinrich Dahl at the time um, convinced me to do a mini internship. So I actually did that at Fitness Together, a few hours a week, really kind of digging my heels in. And then my final internship, I split it between Fitness Together and Miriam Cardiac Rehab. And that was probably one of the best decisions, was kind of getting a little taste of both worlds instead of just trying to fit myself into one. And it just confirmed, you know, my passion and love for the studio environment, not really rehab, just the coaching, the client relationships, and just the energy that when I walked into this studio and over time, I just grew more responsibilities and eventually took ownership of the studio. During that time after graduating, I've played ice hockey my whole life. So I was given the opportunity to coach for a local high school, also in Barrington. And honestly, that was just like a passion project. Just get out on the ice, you know, give back. And it taught me a ton about leadership, team management, how to work with different personalities, both players and parents. And it just kind of really translated directly into managing a studio and leading a team, dealing with clients, and really marketing yourself as a, you know, a community, um, you know, model.
Awesome. Thank you all for sharing. I love hearing your paths. And I mean, something that we talk a lot about in Kid 390 is that we don't usually have this linear mapped out path that we go step by step and can plan out perfectly. So I loved hearing kind of like the element of surprise and kind of like pivots and circling back and all kinds of beautiful things happening over the course of however many years you've been out from school. So hopefully that's reassuring for some of our students to hear that maybe don't feel like they have each step mapped out right now. Because it doesn't sound like any of you are doing anything that you exactly thought you would be doing when you were in their shoes right now. Okay, so to keep us like kind of moving along so we can cover on a bunch of different topics, the next questions you don't all have to answer, you can if you want, but if you do, maybe just like kind of keep it to some the good solid nuggets that you want to share. But even if just a couple of you answer, that's fine. If you want to be like pass or just don't unmute yourself, then that's fine. Um, but for this next question, and some of you already like touched on this a little bit, but how did you determine this was the right career path for you? Were there specific internships or courses or mentors or experiences that shaped your direction?
Yeah, I'll start us off again. Um, I mean, I've only been I graduated 2 years ago, so I mean that question I would probably answer differently, a couple of years down the line. But for me, it was, kind of a mix of what you had just said. I had my internship that I did. It was more so, it was at a PT clinic in Wakefield, very close to URI. I use that as kind of like a relationship builder and just to get my, ideas in the field and kind of just get some exposure. Um, and also, I think networking is a big thing that we talk about now. Um, 10, 15 years ago, it was you have to meet people, you have to talk to people. And now it's all at our fingertips on our phone. So you can reach out on LinkedIn, you can reach out to pretty much anywhere. If you're interested about a career, do some digging. Do some digging on your phone, figure out, what other people's opinions are, learn from other people who didn't like it really. Um, Obviously talking to people in person is great, but sometimes when you're, at home at night, you can just kind of do some digging yourself. Um, and I think for me, only being 2 years since I graduated, it was less about where I wanted to end up, and it was more of just, getting my next step in front of me and just getting a little bit more and more exposure. So I had a little bit more clear of an idea.
I can keep the order and go next. Um, so for me, choosing this path really came down to me understanding who I am as a person, I think, and being willing to pivot. And I knew that if I stayed on that PT path, I might have felt limited or long term in terms of like growth and advancement in my career. Um, so I deciding to get that MHA for me, that degree was important because it opened up a lot of doors for me and so many different opportunities within healthcare, not just one path. So during that MHA program, there was a couple courses in there that specifically was geared towards quality management and population health that really stood out to me. So those courses, I knew that I kind of wanted to go down that path. So I kind of stuck with that after graduating with my MHA. And then also, I have a strong interest in project management and organization. So that also aligns with quality improvement work. And I also got I went through Bryant University and got my PMP. I went through that class and now I want to get my PMP certification. So your project management certification. So that's to do in the future. Um, so, and also, I don't think it wasn't one single moment. It definitely was a combination of knowing my strength, being open to change, and then gaining exposure through education that guided me to this career for sure.
Yeah, so kind of piggybacking on what Angelica had said, I definitely was feeling a little pigeonholed in the pre-PT field. Wasn't really what I was truly passionate about, and that really showed in that internship. So I had always had an affinity of working with children through high school. I worked at after school programs, summer camps, and even in the PT role that I was projecting myself in, I had wanted to work either in a clinic with children or in a school-based PT setting. But I was very thankful for the PTs that I was interning with at Sargent. They let me kind of hang out in the special ed department. That kind of got my foot in the door when I was trying to find what I was into. So, yeah, just thankful for the people that were very supportive.
I think I kind of hit on that in my last question. Just getting your feet wet, doing multiple internships. I mean, I think, it wasn't a straight path, as you said, Courtney, and like it really came from building experiences and taking opportunities as they came up. Being around people already doing what you want to do in the job, helped see like what growth could potentially look like in that space. Um, and I do think that, being adaptable, but I think enjoying the culture, and the room to grow is just as important as, the environment that you put yourself in. I think a lot of, we're taught to chase roles, or titles or, that long-term image. And I think putting yourself in an environment and culture, is kind of, where growth actually happens. And yeah, long-term happiness.
Yeah, I agree. It's not just about a role or a title when you have to spend so many hours at the job. Um, I think the environment means a lot, um, and especially for prioritizing your own well-being. So let's get a feel. So environment, I might tie in a little bit to this next question a little bit, but what does a typical workday look like in your role? So you can talk us through a typical day at your job and what do you find most rewarding? What do you find most challenging? Anything you want to share about your typical work day?
Yeah, so I'll start off that question. So now I am in medical device sales, which I think is a very hard industry to kind of describe very quickly. Um, in kind of a short explanation, on a day to day, I'm in surgery, kind of supporting doctors that use my product. So I deal with, people need hip replacements, they need knee replacements, and they need shoulder replacements. A lot of those, instruments and stuff that they put in you is pretty much the same. But there's little differences that each company has, and that's where I come in, where I'm maintaining accounts and kind of working with surgeons mainly in Rhode Island, some Connecticut as well. But a lot of it is just preparation and learning at a very quick pace. And that's something that's been, very exciting for me. Definitely very hard in certain aspects. But I think what kind of drove me into this position, I think it was Angelica that talked about it, was, kind of like learning new things and finding it fascinating to, pick up things and teach yourself things. It kind of drives me like new technology. So that was one of the driving factors that kind of wanted me to get into this industry. Um, and then yeah, just on a day to day, just I'm pretty fresh in this role, so I think just day by day learning new things and trying to kind of piggyback what I can do. And a lot of that just kind of comes to being, you know, open to learn and just vulnerable with yourself. Sometimes I may not be so good at this thing. Let me work on that. And if I'm good at another thing, let me use that to get me through where I'm at.
All right, I think I'm next. So my role is structured like a typical 9 to 5, but the work itself is very dynamic and it's constantly evolving. So I am at a cubicle, but the work is a lot sometimes. So one thing I remember that I learned quickly in healthcare is how heavily regulated everything is. Almost everything ties back to requirements for organizations like CMS, NCQA, Medicaid, or state programs. So a lot of my day involves making sure that that the work we're doing, whether it's quality improvement initiatives or reporting, is aligned with those requirements. So it's very regulated. I spend a lot of time analyzing data, identifying gaps in care, and working with different teams to implement strategies to improve our performance. So a lot of cross department work that I do. Um, So what I find most rewarding is being able to make real impact on patients and members through the work that I do every day. Even though I'm not directly patient facing, I know the work is making a difference on a larger scale. And then I also really value being surrounded by smart, driven people. I think that's the athlete in me. I learn something new every day, which I'm really grateful for, and I earn for every day. And then one of the biggest challenges has been learning how to navigate through the corporate environment. Things like finding your voice, knowing when to speak up, understanding how to communicate effectively depending on your audience. So if you're talking to a doctor, if you're talking to office staff, if you're talking to your boss, if you're talking to 45 people in a meeting, you have to know how your audience. Um, I also learned that you really have to advocate for yourself. No one is going to do that for you. I'm going to tell you that now. And because healthcare is so regulated, like I mentioned, sometimes it feels like things are moving slowly than you like. But that's just part of the environment, and you have to learn to work within it.
So typical work day, we see our school has over 700 students in the building. We see all of them twice over the course of the week. So we rotate through all the students twice a week throughout the school year. We work on varying skills. We follow our state recommendations and then national standards through Shape America. So we're following through on all of the content skills that are required by the state and the national standards. We work them through different units throughout the school year, following different movement patterns, using different implements. Additionally, we consult a lot with occupational therapy, physical therapy, and special ed services within the building in the district. We kind of pride ourselves on being the more inclusive building in the district, where any student, we're going to get them to do something. Whether it's a student with a visual impairment, we get them playing badminton, pickleball, volleyball, just finding different ways to get them to do everything that everyone else can do, just at their level. So with that, that's probably both the most challenging and rewarding. Just trying to find ways to get all the students involved. That could include building things out of PVC pipe, different adapted equipment, and just having a high level of engagement, because we recognize that phys ed is not for everybody. It's not everyone's favorite class, but trying to get them to get involved at their level and where they feel comfortable, included, and get moving.
My day is a mix of, client work and majority business oversight. I've built a studio where I don't have to be training clients day in and day out. So I have a full-time manager, so I'm not handling everyday operational, day-to-day detail. Instead, I just focus on building and maintaining long-term client relationships. Being there for 16 years, I train a few clients still. It's hard not to when you've, seen them 3 to 4 times a week for the last 16 years. I keep that, close to my heart. So I've seen them make real progress and help them transform their lives. So, I keep them on my schedule. It switches up my day. It brings me, keeps my feet on the ground. And that's, it's really what I love. But so besides, coaching the few clients, behind the scenes work, marketing, strategy, business growth, networking. I serve on a few different boards, like a franchise advisory council. I'm on a board of a leading nursing home in Rhode Island, and then the URI Kinesiology Advisory Board as well. That I also love. I mean, it gives me a broader leadership perspective, but it also allows me to contribute back to the community and industry that kind of built me beyond the studio. Yeah, I mean, I think the most challenging part is juggling multiple priorities and switching between, the client facing and also the strategic role, building my team. But, I don't know, like being an athlete, I don't know. I just have a real drive to like keep things growing and keep things energized and like seeing where we can take them. So,
All right, thank you. All right, so now looking back, to your time as a kinesiology student and now working in the field, what skills, experiences, or preparation do you think makes students more competitive entering into your area of the field? That could be like schooling they need, or it could be any types of skills too. Skills, schooling, certs. I know a lot of certs were thrown out too, and further education that you just keep on learning. So just anything that stands out to you in that area.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a mix, of a little bit of everything for sure. Depending on where you end up, certain things may matter a little bit more. Um, but I think one thing that matters a lot is, your method of doing things. So that like preparation, because it does show when you go into the workforce, and it makes learning a lot easier. It makes proving yourself a lot easier. So, something as simple as, having a structure to your week about, when you're going to study for that exam coming up. All those skills kind of translate when you graduate into the workforce. So, you want to get that content down, but a lot of it is that, that those habits and those methods that you learn yourself to succeed, because everyone's different. So once you kind of, can work on that and navigate it, that really helps you once you graduate, in pretty much any position you end up in. For me personally, um, my anatomy and physiology is put to the test. So I'm glad I was able to, in the past year and a half before I started this position that I'm in, um, work in the orthopedic field. So a lot of that was, refreshing and reminding myself of what I was studying my sophomore year of college, junior year, whatever it was. But it is cool to implement those things. Just biomechanics is something I'm referencing all the time. My anatomy and physiology, I'm just kind of honing in on those skills. So I think it depends where you end up, but I would say your method of doing things and knowing yourself and being able to set yourself up the best is really what kind of can make you stand out, going into the workforce, and and just being willing to learn new things, step out of your comfort zone a little bit. I know that sounds a little cliche, but sometimes just getting out there and putting yourself in a position just as you can look back on it and then kind of look at those things that you've learned.
Yeah, and just to piggyback off of Jake, so some things that stood out to me is first being driven and having a strong willingness to learn. That mindset is everything, especially early on in your career. Second, being open to feedback and being able to take criticism in a constructive way. That's how you grow. A lot of people take offense to criticism. I love it. So please tell me what I'm doing wrong. Um, that's how you grow. And a third is building connections. Healthcare is very relationship driven, especially in the small data state of Rhode Island or New England in general. I feel like everyone knows everyone. And it really is about who you know and how well you know the information as well. Um, and when I was in school, I joined an organization like American College of Healthcare Executives, both in Rhode Island and Massachusetts, and that helped me start building connections early, especially in my field. And lastly, I'd also say yes to opportunities, even if it makes you feel uncomfortable, whether it's in internships, networking events, new experiences, putting yourself out there, can really make a huge difference.
So I'd definitely say adaptability is one of the largest skills that we use daily. Just you never know what you're going to get any minute, any day. So finding what works and just kind of running with it and not panicking in the moment. Um, and then just like Angelica had said, joining different groups, different associations, specifically in phys ed. There's each state has a association for health, phys ed, recreation, and dance. Joining those, there's the national phys ed associations that you can join. There's a lot of networking within that, lesson sharing, and different things like that that are definitely utilized daily.
Um, I would say, be adaptable and being curious. I mean, that's how industries evolve. Businesses change all the time. I think adaptability and being able to pivot, like running a business during and still growing it during market swings and pandemics, really teaches you a lot about, yourself and having your team rowing the boat in the same direction. Um, I think as students, we often like underestimate the value of like being authentic. Like your personality is what's going to differentiate you. Your willingness to learn, connect with like your mentors and peers and, clients or patients, whatever field you choose. I think, not being a clone of, your mentor. I think that's what's going to differentiate, students going into the workforce. That's what I look for. Um, Otherwise, all my interviews would be the same, but who I choose to have represent me in a room with my clients, and, demonstrate what my business stands for. I want people, and people who are passionate, not just, people who I don't want to say robots, but, people who maybe are a little too information driven. I think in certain aspects of our field that, that the technicality is extremely important. And that's, how I program for my clients and how my staff programs is extremely technical. But once you're in the room, some of that the client doesn't care. And it's a human being and standing in front of you who you're going to have to take care of, and is trusting you. And so I think that part matters a lot more. Um,
Okay, thank you. So let's talk about trends. Some of you have been in your area of the field for a while. Do you want to talk about any major trends that you've seen evolve even during your time working in the field, or things that you see starting to develop, or any predictions for the future?
I've only been in my field for, obviously shorter than most, so I'll keep it pretty brief. But I guess something that, I find interesting is that, some, like I work with a lot of doctors, that, some of them are 60 plus years old and they've been doing it by the books using their simple technology that they've had, um, available to them. But something to look into, even if you guys just want to do some research, is there's a lot of like robot assisted surgeries that are in pretty much any field now. I work in orthopedics, but they're all over the place, and it puts some companies like me out of business. But it is very cool and innovative to check out. So if you're ever interested in that, there's plenty, businesses and companies out there. Even if you're just on LinkedIn, just follow a few companies and do your scrolling.
I think healthcare, like I had mentioned, is very evolving, but one of the biggest trends right now, specifically in my field, is the shift towards value-based care. So, meaning the focus is on quality and outcomes rather than the volume. There's also growing reliance on data. So, especially as the industry moves towards standardizing claims-based measurements in the future. And also technology is another major area, especially with the rise of AI and tools. So that can support data analysis and workflow efficiencies. Even I'm in meetings all day and I want to use AI to help me with my minutes. Learning how to use that to help your job daily. Also, being comfortable learning and using tools will be really important. And then overall, the field is becoming more data driven and more technology focused and staying highly regulated. So I think being able to adapt is key, especially in this new AI world that we're in.
So, kind of going off of what Angelica said about AI and everything, so that actually does play a pretty big role in phys ed specifically. We have a lot of students that wear personal fitness devices, so there's been an ongoing trend of moving away from the one size fits all fitness testing that is done in a lot of districts and moving towards individual exercise prescriptions based off of those wearables, using different biometric feedback, and which is pretty neat. We haven't adapted that yet, but we're hoping in the near future that we're able to. But also working a lot with social emotional learning and trauma informed education, integrating mindfulness and breath work and emotional check-ins at the start and end of classes, making sure that the students are getting what they're supposed to out of the class and not having it being a triggering experience, and getting them to actually enjoy phys ed and taking that mindset and carrying it across an entire lifetime and making them lifelong fitness learners.
Um, Industry trends. I think, it's exercise, so there's always something new. But I've luckily for me, like our studio is we deal with one-on-one personalized coaching. So each client gets their own private mini gym. We have multiple rooms fully outfitted. So the shift right now in fitness is more towards a personalized, like relationship-based training as kind of AI and technology takes over. People are, more thirsty for actual interaction. Um, so that's beneficial. Clients want guidance, I think, at the end of the day, and accountability and community. So, as much as the fitness world gets stuck in what's new, it was, right now it's High Rocks or CrossFits and Zumba, but I think staying in our lane and, whatever interests you. But I think, long term, what the clients want and what the fitness industry wants, there's a real swing into a hybrid model or more virtual coaching, whether it's in the nutrition space or the personal training space. Injury prevention is huge right now. And, as higher income earners actually get like lower in age. Right now it's, 40-year-olds, where a lot of the high income earners were 50 to 60-year-olds spending a lot of money on personalized fitness. Now it's skewing even lower, with some disposable income. So I think, focusing on what they want, which is, long-term health, longevity, and feeding those needs, I think are going to be super important long term.
Great. Thank you. So I want to leave enough time for questions from students at the end. So I'm going to combine these last two questions. So what factors are important for you when determining whether an employer is the right fit for you? So anything about that? And also, just what's one piece of advice that you have for our students? What's something that you wish you knew before graduating? So, anything about employers being the right fit for you or not? And then also a piece of advice that you wish you knew.
Yeah, so I mean, I think when you really want a job and you're just looking for experience, sometimes it can be easy getting the mindset of, I'll take whatever I can get. Like if they offer me a position, like this seems great, but I feel like, it's great to have those you need to have those core values. You know, you need your ABC needs need to be met. For me, it was, I enjoy, living at home still. I live in Jamestown, Rhode Island. I wanted to generally be able to work in this area. But I also wanted to be in a position where, I put myself in the best spot and I could learn as much as I could. So it was more so about, if what they wanted was what I was looking for just as much. For me, it was, I didn't want to take on too much getting into an industry like medical device sales. So it was important for me to, they needed me to specifically focus on shoulder replacements first. So that was big for me. So it was easier to kind of hop into this role and learn small so that I could, get to that bigger step. And a piece of advice that I would give, I think I might have touched on this earlier on the first question. Um, I got so stuck when I was in college thinking about, I need to have exactly planned out. This is what I'm going to do for my career because all my friends were like, oh, this is what I'm going to be doing for my career. And it's more so about just getting yourself in the right mentality in the right spots and less about the destination. So, just take another step forward, try something new, but also, have your ABCs and kind of navigate which one you want to go to because that will help you get towards a destination that you're going to enjoy a lot more.
So for me, the biggest factor has always been the people, especially your direct manager. And then having someone who is willing to teach you, support you, and help you grow makes a huge difference in your experience at a company. Also, I look for opportunity for growth, being in that role where I can continue to learn, take on new challenges, and advance over time is really important to me. And lastly, the company culture and values, making sure that they align with what's important to you, because that really does impact your day-to-day experience. And then my lightning round question, one piece of advice is it takes time to grow your career. So be patient. I know I didn't want to hear that, but be patient, stay open to learning, and put yourself in positions that will help you move forward.
So I think the biggest thing that I was looking for in an employer was the balance of autonomy and support. Just kind of allowing me to do my own thing, do what I know how to do, and then be able to have that support as well when needed. Um, Having that structured mentorship, especially in the early days, and knowing that having that support as well as the autonomy can balance that feeling of isolation, and being able to ask questions. And then, kind of like Angelica said, the one piece of advice is just be patient because you never know where you're going to end up, who you're going to meet, what you're going to fall in love with, and just bide your time, ask questions, be willing to learn.
I think I'll wrap my answer, both of them kind of all in one. I know. I think I'd encourage students to, not just think of the job as like the tasks you're going to do, but the environment you're stepping into. I was lucky that, I could find that in my internship. But I think seeking a workplace where people are actually willing to invest in you and guide you, give feedback, and like help you grow, whether that's where you stay or not. I think that's a great foundation for like a first place to work, right? Coming out of college. Is it supportive? Are there doors that are gonna like a path to advance? Is there an environment where you can collaborate? Is there some structure? I don't know. I think paying attention to values, communication style of the leadership, the energy of the organization as a whole. Um, I don't know. I think, the perfect title or salary won't make up for a toxic, unsupportive environment at the end of the day. And when we think about how long we're going to be in our careers, right? And a lot of people do switch careers. I think the average is like 4 times before people retire nowadays. But if you can have a passion, right, in kinesiology and movement and exercise and be able to stay in that your whole trajectory, I think those are kind of key pieces is just finding what you love about it and making sure it's, you're creating the environment yourself as well as you grow to stay in that long term and have success.
All right. Thank you. These were great responses. In the last couple of minutes, I just want to open the floor up to questions from students. You can type your question in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and ask a question. Let's see.
Um, I have a question for Allison. Um, I'm very interested in business ownership as the long term, I guess you could say. That being said, what's your take on number one, some of the challenges I should prepare for if I change that path and decide to go with it? Because I won't be finishing PT until I'm about 39. So risk versus reward for going straight into, we'll say, clinic ownership with a focus in preventative care. Because I've been fascinated by everything, we'll say, human optimization.
Um, yeah, I mean, it's hard to say without having met you, Enrique, and kind of what makes you who you are. And um, yeah, I mean, I think, the benefits of business ownership outweigh anything. That's me personally, whatever it takes. There obviously are challenges hiring if you're going into a clinical insurances. Angelica can probably speak to that, and coverage. But I mean, I think if it's worth it, I mean, you can have my contact info from CJ or Courtney, and reach out. I'd be willing to, kind of dig through some stuff with you. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of in and outs of the day to day. And I think focusing on why why you want it is kind of what brings me out of some of those more challenging situations. You know, a pandemic is a perfect example. Right now with market swings and, I am in an industry that needs people to, pay a high level of entry for what we do. So, it's not just a small membership fee. It's an investment for clients. And yeah, so I'd be willing to, sit down and, hop on a call or a Zoom and kind of answer your questions a little deeper.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Any other questions? Again, you can unmute yourself or you can just type it in the chat. And we can get contact info if that's okay with all of the panelists, and I can post that to at least to the Kin 390 Brightspace page, but if there are other participants, we can share it with them. Yeah. Well, I think that might conclude our time. You think so, CJ? Yeah.
I think so. I guess
Yeah.
I never introduced myself to the students. I'm your career education specialist, so if you have any career questions, you can schedule with me using Starfish. I can help you with your internship job search. So just so anybody who's confused who I am, I never said that at the beginning.
All right. Well, thank you to all. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you to all of our students that came out to take in this wonderful wisdom that was shared. Hopefully, you have a lot of food for thought that you can continue to think about. And have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Right. So we got everyone. There's one Logan that we don't have. So if you know a Logan in your class, we just don't know his last name.
Okay. That's okay. We'll figure that out. My TA will figure that out, hopefully. Yeah.
Well, thank you. Well, I
Yeah.
guess I can stop recording.
Is